The alert came in at 2:07 p.m. Delinquency reported on a $25,000 line of credit. My first thought was a digital scam, maybe phishing, but the email had my full name, the last four digits of my social security number, and a direct link to the actual bank portal I used. I logged in, and there it was, an active line of credit, used, overdue for more than 2 weeks. No prior warning, no physical signature, just my personal info, all accurate, and a debt that had nothing to do with my life. I called customer service. The woman on the line confirmed the application had been made online, digitally verified, with an address that matched my credit history and transactions already in motion. The purchases weren't electronics or sketchy websites. They were subscriptions for creative software, digital platforms, technical services, a specific, almost methodical pattern. And the more I listened, the stronger the feeling got. It didn't sound like a stranger, and as crazy as it seemed, I was already starting to suspect who might be behind it all. My brother Sean. My name is Mark Collins, I'm 39, and I've been working as a civil engineer for over a decade. I live in Hoboken and cross the Hudson every day to work in Manhattan, handling the structural side of public construction projects. I'm not the best in the office, not the brightest, but I get things done. I've never missed a deadline, never got written up, never been late on taxes. I keep my records clean because I learned early on that even a small mistake can come at a high cost. I like what I do, and even more, I like the sense of order it gives me. My dad was a truck driver. He'd be gone for days. My mom kept the house running on a tight budget, with my younger brother Sean constantly needing attention. He was fragile, scattered, always breaking things. I wasn't. I kept quiet, did my part, and no one had to worry about me. That's how I grew up. I fixed what I could and found my way through the rest. By the time I graduated college, I had a steady job and a routine that fit neatly into a schedule. From that point on, I became the anchor of the family. The help started small. Some money to cover a surgery, another bit to finish paying off a car. Then came the monthly transfers, always with some kind of explanation. A loan gone bad, a late bill, a tough stretch. At first it felt fair, then it became automatic. I made good money. They didn't. And every month, a chunk of my paycheck went straight to covering what was missing at my parents' house, and often in Sean's life. 5 years ago, he came to me with an idea to start a video production company. Said his name was blocked at the banks, but with a little help, he could get things up and running. I suggested we open a joint account. That way, he could operate legally, and I'd have some level of security. We opened it. He used it for a while, then vanished. We never spoke about it again. And I, who should have shut it down right then, just let it be. Nothing happened, so I forgot about it. I decided to cut the monthly support 3 months ago. It wasn't out of spite or resentment. It was just too much of a burden with nothing coming back. Only silence. No calls, no texts, nothing. Like the cutoff didn't matter, which only confirmed what I'd been feeling for a while. Maybe I wasn't really part of the family, just part of the maintenance. I remember my dad's birthday. I saw the celebration in a picture someone sent to a group chat. Full table, simple decorations, everyone there, except me. No invite, no explanation. But it didn't surprise me. Invitations had already been thinning out. When the money stopped, so did the contact, and I didn't chase it. Didn't think it was worth demanding a place where I was only ever a duty. With the bank alert still fresh in my mind, I started thinking about that joint account again. I opened the app and checked. It was still active. I requested a full statement, but the bank said it would take 2 business days. Up to that point, I was still trying to believe it was an external scam, some kind of data theft, but something felt off. The fraud looked like it was built on something legit, something that already belonged to me, something someone close could use without raising suspicion. That's when a suspicion I'd never let surface started to grow. It wasn't the first time Sean talked about trying something new. Wasn't the first time he mentioned platforms, videos, digital content, and now, with those organized charges, specific subscriptions, and timing that lined up with the end of the money transfers, it started to make sense. Still no proof, but it was already weighing on me. I filed the dispute that same day. The bank required a police report, a formal letter, copies of my documents, and a recent proof of address. Meanwhile, the debt remained active. Interest kept piling up, the past due balance grew, and my FICO score took a nosedive. Within days, 2 of my credit cards had their limits cut. Even as the victim, the system was already treating me like I was at fault. Everything I used to keep under control was slipping through my fingers. At work, a reimbursement request was denied due to a temporary credit restriction. I had to explain to the finance department that I was dealing with fraud. No one questioned me directly, but things changed. The looks got shorter, the distance more noticeable. When you work with public contracts, your name has to be as clean as your numbers. And even if you prove you're innocent later, the damage is already done. What I was feeling now was the beginning of a slow drift, quiet but real. My routine kept unraveling. I started waking up before the alarm, getting in early, staying late, avoiding conversation. I wrote down everything I needed to do, but barely got anything done. At home, the signs were obvious. Dishes piling up, clothes unpressed, groceries forgotten in the fridge. I started living in shortcuts, microwave meals, rushed showers, constant silence. It was like my life had shrunk into a bare minimum survival zone. Everything else was just background noise. Then I got the joint account statement. Still active. All digital transactions. Small. Frequent. No withdrawals. No physical items. Just subscriptions for software, video editing, soundtracks, content automation. It wasn't random. It was methodical, organized, built with intention. This wasn't just a run-of-the-mill scam. It was a plan. And whoever made it took their time, knowing exactly what they needed. I opened a spreadsheet and started cross-referencing the data. The activity began right after my last transfer to my parents. It was like someone had waited for the cutoff to make their move. The names of the platforms, the spending rhythm, the sequence of services, it all resembled Sean's old projects. He used to talk about launching a production company, always said he just needed the right setup. And this was the setup, paid for in my name. I sent him a direct message. No fluff. Did you take out a loan in my name? He never even opened it. I tried calling right after. It rang several times, never went to voicemail. I tried again later that day. Nothing. Then I checked his social media. Everything was frozen. It wasn't just that he didn't want to talk. It felt like he'd vanished before I even knew to look. That night, I sent a second message, this time to my mom. Is Sean working on something new? She replied a few hours later. She said, he leaves early and comes back late. We barely see him. That was all she said, but it was more than enough. No mention of a job, no denial, just a dry, vague, uncomfortable answer, like someone saying what they can while avoiding what they know. I kept updating the spreadsheet. The data lined up, the dates, the charges, the services. Everything matched a very specific type of activity. This wasn't a random fraud. It was something personal, something built with access. I still didn't have proof, but the pattern was complete, and all I needed now was for someone to finally say out loud what I was already starting to accept. After a few more days of digging, I had all the data I needed. What I was still missing wasn't in spreadsheets or bank statements. What was missing was looking my parents and my brother in the eyes and watching how they'd react when the truth started closing in on the name they'd always protected the most. I sent a message early in the morning. My dad replied, "We'll be home at 5. No questions, no surprise. Just a dry answer, like someone who already knows what's coming and wants to control the timing." I arrived right on time. The house was quiet, too clean, no sound from the television, no smell of food. The welcome was formal, a handshake from my dad, a quick hug from my mom. My brother, as expected, wasn't there. I sat at the edge of the couch and started talking. I explained the situation with the bank, the nearly 100,000 in loans, my dropping credit score, the frozen cards, and the very real risk to my job. I didn't beat around the bush. Everything points to activity from the account I kept with Sean, and the spending pattern matches things he's tried before. I don't have the final proof, but I know it was him. My mom lowered her eyes, still gripping the dish towel in her lap. My dad crossed his arms, staring at the floor. I went on, talking about closing the account, the structure of the transactions, the dates. Then I added, almost as a side note, the account was closed right after the loans were approved. Pretty convenient timing. My mom jumped in before my dad even looked up. "Are you sure it was Sean, Mark?" She said it like someone already halfway through justifying it to herself. I waited, didn't say a word. What came next wasn't a denial, it was defense. My dad cleared his throat, then said, "You've got stability. He doesn't. He's trying." My mom added, in a sharper tone, "You cut everything, just like that. He had no way out. He was just trying to get by." I held my gaze on both of them and said, "Having no way out is one thing. Using someone else's name is another. I could lose my job. I could get sued if this doesn't get sorted. That's when the shift happened. She pushed back, but the account was open. You could have shut it down too, couldn't you? Then she deflected with, Sean wouldn't do something like that. It felt like they were more upset about the awkwardness of the situation than about what had actually been done. Sean wasn't the wrongdoer. He was just the one hurt by my decisions. And I wasn't the victim. I was the one who left the door open. They didn't see a crime, just an opportunity. There was no shame. The problem was that I found out, and that they couldn't count on me staying quiet anymore. I stood up. No one tried to stop me. No questions, no denial, not even a half-hearted attempt to smooth over what was on the table. Just that same tired look, like they expected me, once again, to be the adult in the room, like I always had been. But something shifted in that moment. The lack of surprise, the discomfort with my presence, the rush to justify, it all made it clear that the real problem had never been what Sean did. The problem was that I stopped being useful, stopped paying, stopped keeping the machine running. At the door, I paused for a second, looked at both of them. My mom still had her hands in her lap, squeezing that towel like it still had some purpose. My dad kept his eyes down, like he didn't want to be interrupted in his own disappointment. My voice came out calm, steady, not bitter. So that's it. I lost all my worth the moment I stopped paying, after years of helping. Now it's clear. And I left. The gate closed behind me without a sound. No call, no footsteps. For the first time, I didn't wait for an explanation. Because, for the first time, I understood everything. I got home, put my keys away, tossed my shirt straight into the hamper, and took a shower. I heated up leftovers from the night before and ate at the counter without thinking much. Then I checked my checking account, went through emails, deleted useless notifications. I barely slept. The next morning, I woke up early like always. Shirt pressed, black coffee, same walk to the office like it was any regular Monday. But it wasn't regular. My head was too full. I worked with focus, but felt stuck. I got the deliverable out, but it didn't flow. No one asked anything, and I didn't say a word either. It felt like walking in a straight line with your back tense the entire day. The next day, I got the first notice from HR, a straight-to-the-point email. We request formal documentation of the debt dispute and the police report. Lower down, a deadline, 7 calendar days. It was procedure. 2 days later, another notice. Without the required documentation, your temporary removal from projects tied to public contracts will be formally recorded. That was it. The system wasn't out to get me. It was just moving forward. And if I didn't act fast, I'd be pushed out. Not because of guilt, but because of inaction. I tried reactivating one of the frozen credit cards. Denied. Scheduled a rental car for an inspection upstate. Rejected due to blocked credit. Bank fees went up automatically. I opened my personal spreadsheet and reviewed everything. I had savings, enough to cover 3 months of expenses if I kept things tight. But that money wasn't saved to deal with fraud. It was meant to survive a layoff, not cover nearly $100,000 in unrecognized debt. The hole was deeper than the cushion I'd built. Midweek, my technical manager called me in for a chat. He got straight to it, said he trusted my work, but couldn't keep me on if my name had an unresolved legal issue. We've got deadlines to meet, Mark, and contracts that leave no room for risk. This would be a technical replacement, not personal. I nodded. He didn't need to say anything else. I got it. And so did he. No one was accusing me. But no one could defend me without a solid reason for the auditors watching from the outside. The phone stayed silent. No calls, no messages, no sign of Sean anywhere. His social media was still frozen, his number still unreachable. I wasn't expecting contact. But the complete silence said what I needed to hear. The break wasn't emotional, it was practical. I had no use to them anymore, so I simply stopped existing. And deep down, that just confirmed what I already knew. That night I opened my laptop. The dispute form was already loaded, field by field, ready to fill out. All that was left was typing in the name of the responsible party. I closed the lid, picked up the statements and the HR notice, placed them in a folder, and left it on the table. I knew what needed to be done, I just hadn't decided if I would do it. For the first time, I realized that not choosing was still a choice, and if I stayed still, the system would take me down with them. I woke up early, like I had been for the past few weeks. Made black coffee, sat at the table, and opened the folder where I'd been keeping everything. Printed statements, screenshots of transactions, email exchanges with the bank, and the timeline I built to cross-check dates. Every item was there for a reason. I pulled out the key documents, put together a basic report, and finalized the formal complaint. The platform was straightforward. I didn't have to force anything, just described what I'd been collecting all along. I printed the confirmation and filed it. A few hours later, I stepped into a small law office a coworker had recommended. The lawyer was direct, businesslike. I handed him the folder. He read through the documents carefully. No interruptions, no small talk. He took notes on technical details, checked dates, ran a legal query in the system, and then simply said, "With this, we have a start, a case with solid grounds." His voice was measured, his tone professional. No excitement, no sympathy, exactly what I needed. He explained what came next. A formal notice would be sent to the bank requesting a freeze on the disputed debt. Then, a criminal complaint would be filed with the state attorney's office. Lastly, a technical notice would go to my employer, informing them the case was in progress. If we move forward, this could escalate. The kind of fraud you're describing is grounds for jail time. I just nodded. I didn't ask anything else. The next day, I wrote a straightforward email to HR with the documents attached, the police report, the complaint confirmation, the legal opinion. The response came later that afternoon. Status updated to employee under active legal investigation, awaiting further developments. It was formal, emotionless, but it was more than silence. I went back to work on autopilot, met deadlines, replied only when necessary, kept my distance. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't need an alarm to wake up. My routine kept spinning, no distractions. Everything revolved around deadlines, forms, and evidence. Each uneventful day felt like a small win. The exhaustion was building quietly, a kind of fatigue that wasn't physical but slowed everything down. The sky was clear, the breeze mild. One of those afternoons that practically begs to be enjoyed. I took the subway to the East River, got off near the pier, and wandered around. I leaned on the railing at one of the quietest spots on the waterfront and stood there for a while. Not thinking about anything specific, just letting the air move through me. I pulled out my phone to snap a photo of the view, opened Instagram, maybe to post the picture, maybe just to scroll. While framing the shot, I swiped up and a suggestions tab appeared. Among random names, there he was, Sean. The profile used his middle name, like that was enough to fly under the radar, but the face was unmistakable. No filter, no doubt. It was a new account, few followers, a handful of posts. One video stood out. Behind the scenes of our first shoot day. I hit play. Footage from the set, lighting setups, camera movements, the crew adjusting focus. In one part, Sean appears next to the equipment. I rewatched the clip several times, looking closely. Read the caption slowly, until something caught my eye. One of the hashtags was crystal clear. Red V Raptor. I'd seen that name before, pulled up the spreadsheet I had saved in my drive. There it was, $41,800, the biggest charge of all. I compared the video to the purchase details. The body, the rig, the lens, everything matched. The video was sharp, undeniable. He hadn't just bought the camera, he was using it, flaunting it, promoting it, like it was his own achievement, like it hadn't come from my name, my signature, my identity being stolen. The purchases made sense now. That's why the total had skyrocketed. He didn't want to start small. He wanted to look ready. And to do that, he sacrificed me. I screenshotted the video, printed the caption, saved the links, wrote a direct email to the lawyer. This video was posted by Sean. The camera shown is the same one purchased under my name. Total cost, $41,800. See attached. I sent it late that night. I wasn't expecting a quick reply, but it came before lunchtime the next day. Short, direct, just like everything else. That completes the chain. We got him. I read the reply and set the phone down. I didn't feel like celebrating, didn't feel like telling anyone. I just leaned back in my chair and sat there, breathing. This was it, the confirmation, the final piece. The path was complete. Purchase, possession, use, proof, and the legal route was now open. The DA would have everything needed to press charges. And, almost inevitably, convict. My brother, full name, home address, social security number, and his face on video could now be formally indicted. I stayed there for a few minutes. The house was silent. Afternoon light came through the window, calm, like nothing had changed, but everything had. And it wasn't just the legal case. It was what it meant. I didn't feel vindicated, just emptied. The The question came without drama, without weighty pause, without needing an answer, just a thought that surfaced on its own. Am I really going to send my brother to prison? 2 days after the last exchange with my lawyer, I got a new email. The DA had accepted the complaint. The case was moving into its formal phase. Sean would be summoned in the coming weeks to testify under charges of fraud and identity theft. There was no more speculation. It was official. What had been spreadsheets, analysis, and suspicion was now a public criminal case in motion. I closed the email and leaned back in my chair. The process would now follow its course, and I had nothing left to do but watch it unfold. My mom called later that afternoon. I picked up, already knowing what it would be about. Her voice was different, no longer cold or accusatory, but panicked. She started by asking if I was okay. Then came the direct hit. "You reported your brother." I confirmed with one word. She took a deep breath, then asked, nearly pleaded, "He's going to lose everything, Mark. You can't do this." I listened without interrupting. She talked about the family's shame, about the consequences Sean would face, about the possibility of prison, and ended with the plea, "Withdraw it. Let's solve this between us." I took a breath and said, "You call it overreacting. I call it consequences." She paused for a second, then hung up without saying another word. The next night, coming home from work, I was climbing the last few steps of my building and already pulling out my key when I heard the voice. "Mark?" Low tone, but direct. I turned slowly. Sean was there, leaning on the railing. Same dark clothes, gaunt face, sunken eyes. The arrogance was gone. What remained was tension. He looked different, restrained, but with a weight on his shoulders. "You really did it," he said. "You reported me, like I was some stranger." I took a deep breath, key still in hand. Seeing him there, that close, for the first time since dinner, it froze something inside me. What was once a suspicion now had a face. He stepped forward twice. "You happy now? Clean name, everything perfect, and me, I'm left to deal." I said nothing, let him go on. "You stopped helping. We were making do however we could. I had to try something, but you never understood." I kept my eyes on him and said, "You knew exactly what you were doing." He looked away, ran a hand down his face, and muttered, "You destroyed us." It wasn't a confession. It was emotional manipulation, as if I had pulled the trigger and he was the victim. He went quiet for a moment, like he was searching for the right line. Then he said it, "You're going to regret this." The words were flat, not loud, but clear. I stopped. "Is that a threat?" He didn't answer, just turned and started walking down. I stood there for a few seconds before unlocking the door. That was it. He'd shown himself. No more doubts, no more reading between the lines, no more hoping it could be undone. If there had ever been a dilemma, it ended right there. I just had to follow it through to the end. 2 days later, my lawyer called. The court had issued the formal summons. Sean would be served within 72 hours. The case now had a number, a prosecutor assigned, and a preliminary hearing date. The evidence we'd gathered, videos, transactions, legal testimony, was solid enough to support the criminal charge. The trial might not happen right away, the lawyer said, but the weight of the case is already on him. I thanked him and hung up. There was nothing to celebrate, just another step completed. The next morning, I went to the notary to sign the final form ratifying my statement. A simple document legally validating everything I'd already declared. I signed without hesitation. When I left, I didn't look around. I took the subway and went to the office like it was any other Monday. During lunch, I called the bank. The rep confirmed the freeze on my account would be lifted by the end of the week. My credit score was already starting to recover. I quietly jotted down the confirmation numbers, hung up, and got back to work. Nothing felt special about the day, but something had shifted. For the first time in months, my name didn't carry someone else's weight. It was clean, officially, no longer marked by a mistake I never made. That night, I sat on the couch with the folder of documents beside me. I opened it and reviewed every receipt, every completed step. Everything was in order. No loose ends, no stalled procedures. The house was silent, same as always, but I wasn't the same man who used to sit there every night. I was no longer the helpful brother, the son who pitches in, the family's backup plan. And it wasn't out of bitterness or revenge, it was out of necessity, out of survival. I did what I always did. I saw the problem through. The difference was, this time, the consequences didn't fall on me. I just fixed what they broke. The debt, now, belonged to someone else. And no matter how much they try to twist it, justify it, or pin it back on me, it's there, clear, unavoidable. It was Sean's turn to face, for the first time in his life, the weight of what he did. The lawyer called me on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. He said the DA had rejected the plea deal offered by the defense. The judge was clear: aggravated fraud, falsification, and identity theft with proven financial damage. Sean was sentenced to 9 months in prison, no parole, plus partial restitution, a sum that, according to the prosecutor, would likely never be paid in full. The sentence was direct. No appeals, no drama. It didn't change what we already knew. It just made it official. A nearly $100,000 fraud, now sealed by a verdict. I didn't attend the hearing, didn't watch it online either. My lawyer forwarded me the ruling that same day, along with a summary of the upcoming procedural steps. From that point on, I didn't need to do anything else. No more deadlines to meet. What was mine was finally resolved. I closed the folder, filed the documents, and shut down my computer. There was no sense of victory, no poetic justice, just the end of the noise, the end of distortion. 3 weeks later, a cousin from New Jersey I hadn't spoken to in months sent me a message. Your parents sold the house. The home I grew up in, the one I paid to renovate, fixed leaks in, and helped cover the mortgage on for years. Sold below market value. He said the money was used to cover Sean's legal fees, pay court costs, and settle debts they'd racked up trying to protect him. The last update: they're living in a small apartment in Hackensack. They avoid the subject. There was never an explanation, no denial, not even an attempt at truce. After the sentencing, the silence became absolute, not as punishment, but as withdrawal, no contact at all. I was no longer part of what was left of that family structure, and I wasn't surprised, because deep down, it had ended long before. It just needed someone to admit it. I wrapped up the last loose ends, closed the joint account for good, canceled old authorizations, updated my records, deleted contacts from my phone that no longer led anywhere. Removed my name from any lingering associations. It was all practical, dry, no regret, no resentment, just the certainty that there was no more room for concessions. When you go through chaos and survive, you learn not to leave any windows open behind you. Little by little, I started getting back on track. I restructured my schedule, reset my priorities, picked up projects I'd left behind. At work, I was moved to a technical position that gave me more autonomy and paid better. The pace was intense, but clean. No distractions, no outside emergencies cutting through me. At the end of November, I accepted an informal invite for a short trip in December. I started spending more freely, got a new phone, upgraded my laptop. Nothing extravagant, just small choices I'd delayed for responsibilities that were never really mine. I was slowly reclaiming the right to make decisions for myself, without calculating the fallout. Now, those choices came easy. No more second-guessing. Eventually, the only new notification on my phone was from work. My quarterly performance review came with a small bonus. It wasn't about the money. It was about having made it through the storm without falling apart, without losing myself. I didn't feel superior to anyone, but I did feel at peace, because, for the first time, I hadn't let anyone mistake dignity for silence. I didn't stop the collapse, I just stopped funding it, and with each passing week, it became clearer. The bill never landed on me. Justice doesn't give back what you lost, but it keeps them from taking what little you still have left. What happened to me wasn't some sudden rupture. It was the buildup of years spent trying to hold together a structure that was already leaning. I covered what I could, kept quiet about what hurt, hoped that all the effort would be enough to keep me close. And when I stopped giving in, what was left wasn't longing, it was contempt. I wasn't pushed out because of a lawsuit, I was pushed out the moment I stopped being useful. The legal complaint just made official what had been true for a long time. I was never really part of it, I was a resource. The freedom didn't come the day the court issued its sentence, or when I cleared my name. It came gradually, when I stopped explaining the lack of affection by blaming myself for unmet obligations. When I realized the tie that held me wasn't blood, it was function. And by refusing to play that role, I didn't break anything. I just stopped holding up what was already collapsing. The peace that followed wasn't light, but it was clean, and it was mine. Now I'm talking to you, the one who stayed with me through the end. What would you have done in my place? Would you have seen the case through? even knowing it might permanently sever your family ties? Drop a comment. This space is here for that, to explore how each of us handles tough choices when love comes wrapped in obligation. And if you've been through something similar, no matter how small it seems, share it. Sometimes, it's in the simplest story that someone finally sees themselves. You don't have to fix everything right now. Your story might be the end of the silence for someone watching this video right now.